Another French magician, a few years older than Levi, was Pierre Vintras, who announced that he was the reincarnation of Elijah with a mission to prepare the way for Christ's coming in glory. He founded a mysterious sect called the Work of Mercy, which prided itself on a large collection of communion wafers miraculously marked with blood. Levi examined the marks on three of these bloody hosts and diagnosed them as devilish. The first was the sinister sign of the reverse pentagram, a five-pointed star with 2 points upwards, which is a symbol of Satan, the two upper points representing the horns of the Sabbatic goat. It is the goat of lust attacking the heavens with its horn. It is a sign execrated by initiates of a superior rank, even at the Sabbath. The second was a reverse caduceus, with the heads and tails of the intertwined snakes pointing outwards instead of inwards. And above the snakes' heads was a V, like all reverse symbols and symbols of two. These are emblems of evil. The third host was marked with the Hebrew letters of Jehovah upside down. This is again a symbol of the devil, signifying the reversal of the right order of things. Fatality alone exists. God and the spirit are not. Matter is all, and spirit is only a fiction of this matter demented. When Vintras died in 1875, the leadership of the Work of Mercy passed to a defrocked Catholic priest, the Abbe Boullan, and this set the stage for the great battle of bewitchment of the 1880s and 90s. Boullan was born in 1824. After he had taken orders, he became the spiritual director of a nun called Adele Chevalier, who heard supernatural voices and claimed to have been miraculously healed of a disease by the Virgin Mary. Boullan and Adele Chevalier became lovers. In 1859, they founded the Society for the Reparation of Souls, which, in spite of its high-sounding name, was devoted to sex magic and, on at least one occasion, to ritual murder. On December 8, 1860, Boullan ceremoniously sacrificed a child born to him by Adele Chevalier as the high point of a mass. Boullan, who had a pentagram tattooed at the corner of his left eye, the left side being the side of evil, and celebrated Mass in vestments on which an inverted crucifix was embroidered, specialized in exorcism, the casting out of evil spirits. He recommended consecrated hosts mixed with feces, which as a fertilizer contains powerful life energy, as a cure for nuns who complained that they were tormented by devils. He also taught them how to hypnotize themselves into thinking that they were copulating with Christ and the saints, and how to enjoy sexual intercourse with his own astral body. In 1875, Boullan announced that he was a reincarnation of John the Baptist and the new leader of the Work of Mercy. Some members of the sect refused to accept him, but he gathered a group of followers around him at Lyon. Late in 1886, they were visited by the young Marquis Stanislas de Guaita, a morphine addict who later founded the Kabbalistic Order of the Rose Cross in Paris. Guaita had read Eliphas Levi the year before and was enthusiastically immersed in the study and practice of magic. He stayed 2 weeks at Lyon and came away disgusted. Boullan believed that humanity's path to God lay through the sex act. He encouraged intercourse with supernatural beings and with other mortals, and the group performed ceremonious unions of life, or ritual copulations. Guaita said that the practical result of Boullan's teaching was unlimited promiscuity with adultery, incest, bestiality, and masturbation, practiced as solemn acts of worship. A month later, a follower of Boullan's called Oswald Worth also left Lyon in disgust. Guaita and Worth joined forces. In May 1887, they wrote to Boullan announcing that they had judged him and had condemned him. They explained afterwards that all they meant by this was that they would show him up in public as a scoundrel, but Boullan was convinced, perhaps rightly, that they intended to kill him by black magic. He took the necessary measures to defend himself, and the great battle of bewitchment began. The story of this magical contest is irresistibly comic now, but it was not at all humorous for those who were involved in it at the time. It is not clear whether the Guaita faction were actually casting spells against Boullan at all, but Boullan was convinced of it and, in terror of his life, launched appalling anathemas, conjurations, and incantations against the foe. He was assisted by his housekeeper, Julie Thibault, who was clairvoyant. One of Boullan's supporters, Jules Bois, described the scene at Lyon, said that Boullan asked Julie Thibault, if she could discern what the workers of iniquity were doing. She said they were putting a portrait of Boullan into a coffin to kill him by imitative magic. Next, she announced that they were saying a black mass against him. Boullan retaliated with a ceremony called the Sacrifice of Glory of Melchizedek, in which the feminine rite allied to the masculine rite. Red wine mingled with white created a victorious ferment, by which the impious altars were overthrown and the hierophants of Satanism struck dead. Unfortunately, it turned out that the satanic hierophants had only been temporarily discommoded, as on a later occasion, mysterious thumping noises like the blows of a fist on flesh were heard. Lumps appeared on Boullan's face, and with a loud cry, he tore open his robe to show a bleeding wound on his chest. Another of Boullan's partisans from 1890 on was the novelist J.K. Huysmans, who dabbled extensively in the occult and whose novel La Basse contains one of the most famous descriptions of a black mass. Huysmans was with Boullan at Lyon in 1891. By this time, Boullan had enlisted another clairvoyant girl besides Julie Thibault. Boullan's party was convinced that Guaita had tried to poison the girl. They believed that he could volatilize poisons and project them through space. He was also supposed to own a familiar spirit, which was kept locked in a cupboard when not needed. However, the girl had retaliated. Writing to a friend, Huysmans said that Guaita ought now to be in bed, and the arm he usually injects with morphine should be looking like a balloon. Boullan was flinging himself all over the place. I'm told that de Guaita poisoned the little clairvoyant, who promptly counterattacked by virtue of the law of return. So that it would be interesting to know whether, in fact, de Guaita had been laid low. The two women here see him in bed. The law of return is the principle that the force of the spell which fails rebounds on the head of the sorcerer. In another letter, Huysmans said, Boullan jumps about like a tiger cat, clutching one of his hosts and invoking aid of St. Michael and the eternal judiciaries of eternal justice. Then standing at his altar, he cries out, strike down Paladin, SDP, SDP. And Maman Thibault, her hands folded on her belly, announces it is done. Paladin was one of Guaita's group. Huysmans became convinced that he himself was one of the targets of Guaita's sorcery. He felt the presence of an invisible force all about him and something cold moving across his face. At bedtime, what he called fluidic fisticuffs were aimed at him. His cat seemed to be suffering from the same symptoms. He appealed to Boullan for help. Boullan sent him one of the blood-marked hosts from the Vintras collection and a paste made of myrrh, incense, camphor, and cloves, which would keep evil influences at bay if burned in the fireplace. Like salt, spices have power against demons because they are preservatives. On one occasion, Boullan warned Huysmans not to go to his office next day. Huysmans stayed at home, and in his abeyance, a heavy mirror fell down and smashed on his desk. Anyone sitting at the desk would probably have been killed. The battle reached its climax at the beginning of 1893. On January 3rd, Boullan wrote to Huysmans saying that the new year was one of ill omen. The figures 8, 9, 3 form a combination which foreshadows bad news. probably because 8 plus 9 plus 3 equals 20 and 2 plus 0 equals 2, which is the number of evil and the devil. During the previous night, Julie Thibault dreamed of Guaita, and in the early hours of the morning, a blackbird of death cried out. It was herald of the attack. Boullan woke at 3 a.m., feeling that he was being suffocated. He lost consciousness for half an hour, but by 4 o'clock he believed that the danger was past. He was mistaken. He died the next day, January 4th. Both Huysmans and Jules Bois were convinced that Boullan had been killed by sorcery. After Bois had published violent attacks on Guaita, in which he accused him of being a black magician, Bois and Guaita fought a duel with pistols. As the day of the duel approached, it was believed that both sides were filling the atmosphere with frantic spells and conjurations. On the way to the duel, one of the horses pulling the carriage Bois was in stopped dead in its tracks and began to tremble and then to stagger as if it had seen the devil himself. This trembling fit lasted for 20 minutes. At the duel itself, each man fired once and neither was hit. Afterwards, it was found that a bullet was stuck in the barrel of one of the pistols. The Bois supporters were convinced that his gun had fired and that they had magically prevented Guaita's bullet from leaving his pistol. 3 days later, Bois fought a duel with one of Guaita's friends, an occultist who called himself Papus, and wrote one of the standard books on the tarot cards. On the way to this duel, Bois again had to cope with what seemed to be occult interference with the horses. The horse drawing his first carriage collapsed. He took another, but this horse fell and the carriage overturned. Bois arrived battered and bleeding at the duel, which was fought with swords. Neither man was injured.